Is Sharon here? Sharon Vallette, is she here today? She wrote this beautiful poem, and she sent it to me last year, and I messed it up. So this year I wanted to share it with you. It speaks beautifully to the mother energy. And, oh, you are here. Smile, wave, stand up, wave. Beautiful, thank you. So she wrote this. This is lovely. I'll try and do it justice. Mother. Mother is not a being, though it can be, but the loving, caring energy that we innately possess that is neither male nor female. Mother is not gender bound, but plentiful in our heart and spirit. The mother energy is needed in each of our lives to nurture ourselves, each other, and the planet, moving from warring to loving. Celebrate the mother energy in you. Happy Mother's Day. So I'm excited to begin a new series. And we're going to look for the next 4 weeks at this idea of the 4 spiritual principles of prosperity. Now, if you are already experiencing too much love, too much abundance, too much peace, too much good in your lives, well, then you may want to take this month off. If, however, there's an opening in your life for greater good, for more love, for more abundance, for more money, for more prosperity in general, you might want to hang out. Now, just so you know, in the interest of full disclosure, at some point in this month, I will probably upset you. So just thought I'd let you know that. I'm big, I can take it. Because we're going to look at some ideas that sometimes are counterintuitive to the way we live our lives. And so Edwene Gaines is this master teacher, wonderful little book, this 4 spiritual laws of prosperity, a simple guide to unlimited abundance. And I love our teaching because it teaches us that we are spiritual beings existing in human form, and that the great reality of who we are is that spirit is happening all of the time. We're not trying to reach God so we can have some experience, but the divine already exists, fully orbed, all of the time, and it is our journey to awaken to that greater reality. And so we're not trying to get anything, we're trying to reveal what is true. So the first way I will upset you is by our talk today, which is the laws of tithing. Okay, now lift your eyes back up. I know I could just watch that curtain go, right? So just for today, I want us to engage in this. And I want us to be really clean. I want to be clean about this because one of the things that I know about the principle of tithing is, I know a couple things. 1, it works. And 2, it has been manipulated over the years. So many of us have experience from some previous background where we were told that we would give to our church and we would like it, whether we like it or not, right? So some of us came at this from this approach of obligation or duty or even God punishing us if we didn't or whatever. You will never hear me ask you to tithe to this church specifically. You will, however, hear me talk about the principle of tithing. Because for me, where I've come to in this thing, in this understanding of abundance of money and all that sort of thing, is that for me to not speak about truth would be like me not saying, well, I'm not going to tell you about affirmative prayer, because it might upset some of your preconceived ideas of what prayer is. And I think that would be a horrible disservice to you, right? So I want you to keep breathing. Just keep breathing. Everybody okay? Do we need to take a little break here? Okay, everybody's still with me. Edwene grew up dirt poor, as they say. And not only was poor in physical surrounding, but also with a mentality that goes with that. You see, there is a mentality, there is a consciousness that goes with our experience. Now, it's interesting to me that some people that have been born in poverty develop somehow a consciousness that whatever it takes, I will get myself out of this. Likewise, others will take that consciousness, and we talked about the 4 agreements last month, about move into agreement with that is the way the world is and there's nothing I can do about it, and therefore perpetuate the consciousness of poverty as well as the experience. But the good news, my friends, is we all get to be a choice. We all get to be a choice about what it is we practice, what it is we believe, what it is how we want to show up once we understand that. So I would invite us today to look at an idea around the principle, the law of tithing, not perhaps from where you used to be, of something you have to do and God really even cares, but rather as a spiritual principle that we might practice in order to experience our greater good. In the Bible, Malachi 3:10, it says, "Bring all the tithes into the storehouse that there may be food in my house, and prove me now in this, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you such blessing, there will not be room enough to contain it." What a beautiful promise that is. And what I love about this particular promise is it says, prove it. Prove it in your life. You see, in our teaching, we don't say you must believe anything. Please don't believe what I say. I mean, I'm making it up half the time anyways, right? And I don't know that next year it won't be a little different from what this year's version of truth is. But what I will strive always to do is teach you spiritual principles that you can then take into your life and prove it for yourself. My great spiritual teacher said to me one time, if it doesn't work in the marketplace, it doesn't work. In other words, this is not this nice little philosophy that we have for an hour on Sunday and we all feel good and then we're done. It's like you take the principle and then you say, oh, in the workshop of my life, I'm going to try this. So when we begin to look at this idea around bringing your first fruits back and giving it to where you are spiritually fed, then in the recognition that the divine is the source of our good. Now, it's counterintuitive, isn't it? Because it would seem that if you give stuff away, you're going to have less. Would it not? And yet I would invite you to prove this principle for me today. You can we'll start easy and we'll work our way up, okay? We'll work our way to your money. You can put your wallet back, it's okay. Try this today. See if you can give all your smiles away and have none returned to you. See if you can deplete that supply. I'd invite you to go out into the world and see how much love you can give away until you're completely depleted of love. Right? Doesn't happen, does it? You start telling people you love them, and you know what? They start loving you back. And before you know, you got this little love fest going on. I watch you guys. When you do this, hey, thanks for being a blessing, all of a sudden I'm like, it's out of control. They're all going to, all right, give it up, right? Because that's the way the universe works. That as we give, so shall we receive. So this simple spiritual principle and practice, tithing to me has become as much spiritual practice as my meditation and my prayer life. Because it is the recognition of the divine as my source. Now, if we are spiritual beings and we are living in a spiritual universe, then what we understand is that everything is spirit. Everything is divine in its origin. We believe that the very source of our life is the one life. The very presence of peace is the one peace. All good already exists. And so it is up to us to recognize that truth and reveal that truth into the world. And you're like, yeah, I get it, Marty. I get the love thing. I love, people love me back. The more I love, the more I come. But now we're talking about my money. This is real, right? And as I said recently, it occurs to me that money is about the least real thing in the world anymore. I mean, it is, it's like, I just watch my money thing happen, and it's like somewhere it comes from some source, ADP or somebody, and it goes into a checking account, and all of a sudden there's a new number there. And then I go online and I hit these little buttons, and then there's a different number there, and there's never actually any money, right? I didn't handle anything. I didn't write a check. I didn't do anything. It was just like transactions, right? And so what we want to talk about it like it's real. You see, people like to talk about things as if this form in which we live is reality. Like, this is it. I mean, like, my body is real. And yet what we all know is at some point, we drop this body off and move on, right? So what is the reality? The reality is always the spiritual essence behind that. So when we begin to understand the practice, the spiritual practice of tithing, it is I am going to give of my good first to where I am spiritually fed. And in so doing, I am recognizing that it is source that is my supply, not my job, my 401k, my Social Security, my whatever. You see, we mistake the realm of form as our source. Everybody breathe. Keep breathing. We're going to breathe through this thing together, you see? Now, did you exhaust the supply of air in the room? Yes, somebody did. Somebody slap that person, will you? Right? Because what we know is air is an inexhaustible supply. And so it works really best if we just keep breathing in and out all of the time. So too does the principle of tithing work, that when we give of our good back to where we're spiritually fed, we are acknowledging and recognizing the divine source as our true supply. You see, I often say this, that I am so grateful. I am so grateful that I know what I know about spiritual truth. Because when I used to hang my hat on the realm of form being my good, I was constantly buffeted by the changing forms. You know, if a job changed, if my source went away, that's a scary place. But when you live from the consciousness that recognizes divine, God, infinite being as your source, then you just know that the avenues through which that good comes to you has changed. And sometimes we even welcome it. We go, wow, what new infinite possibility is making itself known for me now? Instead of struggling and crying. When relationships change, we can let them go because we know our greater good is coming to us, right? You see, Jesus said something very powerfully. Now, he spoke of God, the divine, as his father, which is lovely. For today, let's just call it his mother. Because, God is not bound by gender. But in the context and the culture of his time, that relationship was the primary relationship, the relationship between father and firstborn son. So it would make sense that he would talk in that context. But he said, it is the Father's, this power's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. You. Not the person next to you, but you. So I always look at that and go, well, if I'm not experiencing the bounty of this spiritual kingdom, and it is the Father's, the presence, good pleasure to give this kingdom away, where does the problem lie? And once again, I get to have a word with myself. Right? So for many of us, the problem is not in our willingness to give. It is in our mistaken belief that we could exhaust the inexhaustible. And so spiritual teachers through the ages have taught us this principle. If you've studied prosperity at any depth or any length, you come up against this principle of tithing. And you read right through that section and move on to the good stuff, the real stuff, right? That's what I love about Edwin Gaines, who has made it her life mission to transform the prosperity consciousness of the planet. That's a big goal, right? She's doing a pretty good job. She came out of being dirt poor, of not having enough, of struggle and strife. And at some point, she began reading, she began studying, and she kept having this thing show up called the principle of tithing. But she was way too smart for that. She wasn't going to let some preacher talk her into some craziness, right? If you don't have enough and you give some away, you're going to have less, right? Just like with love. And yet, clearly her strategy was not working because she was struggling to pay the bills and feed her kid. And so she had a moment. You know how we have those moments in our lives where we say, well, what if I actually began practicing what I believe to be true? You know those moments? And she said, okay, God, here's the deal. I'll give you 6 months. Long-term contract here. And I will do this, Not joyfully, not happily, but I will do it, right? And amazing things begin to happen. Amazing things begin to happen. Why? Because she had a shift in awareness. So I always say, when we begin to understand how to work with spiritual truth, one of two things is going to happen. Either circumstances are change, or our perception will change. You see, sometimes it is not dependent on somebody else being different for you to have peace and love and joy in your life. Everybody look at your spouse for a moment and just say, I see you. Right? Sometimes it's about our own awakening, our own awareness, our own recognition of the blessings in our lives. And so as she began to do this, things began to change. All of a sudden, some money that was unexpected would show up in her life. People would give her things. People would provide things that seemingly would happen. We've been teaching this Prosperity Plus class, which we will continue to do a couple times a year because I think it is a master's course in learning to live the prosperous life. And the prosperous life is so transcendent of just money. Money is just a symptom. Prosperous living is a way of being in the world. But I love it because we have all of these wonderful, every week people show up. We make a 10-week commitment to try this experiment. And every week somebody's showing up and people are having amazing things happen. Michelle right now is in the south of France for 2 months because she had an idea. No evidence, no money, an idea that she affirmed. And lo and behold, all the pieces came together. And so now she's in the south of France. Others have demonstrated cars. Others have had unexpected good money show up for them out of nowhere that they weren't expecting. I shared recently, I had a student of mine from 18 years ago sent me a tithe check, significant tithe check, just saying, you are always my first and best teacher. Keep that in mind. And I've had some good come into my life, and I just wanted to share it with you. Now, how would you imagine that? You see, our problem is we think we're going to figure out how life is going to work for us. And I would just ask the question, how's that working for you? Look at the past. How did that work for you? How do we ever know how our greater good can unfold for us? And so this practice is about trusting the divine to be our source and supply. It is a spiritual practice. Now, you can do it or not. as I said, you will never hear me ask you to tithe to this church because I want you to tithe to where you're spiritually fed. Right? Now, I'm hoping we're serving a little something, right? A little something, right? But it's really a fun practice when you start to do this and you start to recognize, wow, I was just really spiritually fed by this experience or that experience. And you start being in that divine flow. And you start to realize that the more I flow, the more flows back to me. And then you begin, wow, there's a cycle that's taking place here. And it would make sense to stay in the divine flow. So, my invitation to you is to try this principle. Can't make you pray, can't make you do anything, turns out. But I can invite you to a different experience of life. And I will tell you, for some of us, for others it's no big deal. For some of us, the money thing stretches us more than anything, right? For me, my own personal journey has been, love's no big deal. Manifest stuff I'm good with. I get challenged by my old stories about money. And I realized for many years I said, money's just not that important to me. Anybody ever say that? You don't have to raise your hand, but anybody ever say that? And then I realized that the thing that I stressed the most about in my life was money. The moments of laying awake were about money. So it occurred to me, well, something's off here. If it weren't important to you, you wouldn't be worried about it, right? So, hello, we live in America in 2013. Does money matter? Yeah, right? Just listened to a tape recently that said, we each make 6 to 8 financial decisions every day. From small to large. So maybe it does matter. So this whole thing is about learning the spiritual practice that says if you want true prosperity, you must put the divine first in your finances. There's a rub. Right? If we really walk this walk, then we begin to learn to put God first in all of our lives. Now, maybe that term's not comfortable. Maybe it's the divine. But it is that recognition that who I am is greater than this physical body. Who I am is greater than this world in which I live. That the circumstances I'm currently experiencing, there's something so much more. And as I've learned and grown in my life is I realize that the more that I identify with that divine intelligence, with that creative process, as I stay open and receptive to my greater good and don't worry about the hows, then more and more of that good comes back into my life. And I'm less attached to it. It's this ironic thing that the less attached you are to it, the more it happens. The Buddha had something going on when he said that the source of our suffering is through our attachment. Right? It's like when we let go, then greater good comes to us. Now, we can practice the principle of tithing with our money, which is where you start because that's where it will stretch you. But it's really a principle of tithing of our time, of our energy, of our love, of our good. That's give first. This is why I believe Jesus admonished us to understand that it is better to give than it is to receive. It's not that it's bad to receive, but rather what gets the flow going is when we take the first step. A couple of weeks we're going to talk about forgiveness. So if this didn't stretch you, stay tuned. Because it turns out we're supposed to forgive first. What? I know, that's crazy talk now, right? So I know as we've been doing this building, I took great pride in the fact that when I came here, the sainted being that I am, to save you, no. When I came to serve, the circumstances were a lot of change going on. We were losing couple grand every month. If we had nothing else going on, we did have our consistency, right? We said, this isn't sustainable. We've got to do some things differently. We talked about the facts. We talked about the truth. We made adjustments. We cut back. I worked really cheap. Just to, we did the things necessary to bring into alignment our good stewardship with what was happening. And we've grown from there. So now we're about to stretch ourselves and go into this building. We sign the lease tomorrow. And I've had sleepless nights because my insanity is to think that I'm responsible for what's happening. And then I step back and go, oops, I just moved into the ego self that thinks I'm in charge of this. And so there's a wonderful phrase that I would leave you with, which is, I serve God, money serves me. I serve God. And when I get that this is God's church, and I'm here to serve to the best of my capacity, then it's fun and easy again. And oddly enough, money flows. I will tell you, we had the best month in the history of this church last month. Because we're focused, and it's not like Bill Gates showed up and, things are different, right? It's the same congregation. It's you and me saying, yeah, I can do a little more. And so let's keep that going. There's going to be many opportunities for our greater sharing and our greater abundance, and for our growth and for the opportunity to be of greater service to the world. I serve God. Money serves me. I like that, right? No false idols. So my invitation to you, my friends, is to move beyond the realm of condition, to move beyond the realm of your current circumstances. Because you see, I find myself from time to time acting as if this is all that's possible, right? Do you ever do that in your life? This is all that's possible for me. And they go, well, in God, all things are possible. What is necessary is for my expansion, for my growth, for my greater awareness of this infinite divine substance, which delights in its self-expression. It is the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. Let us make it our mission to receive it graciously. Let us pray. As we simply turn inward, honoring this divine life, this infinite intelligence that is seeking its self-expression in us, through us, and as us. We turn away from the realm of conditions and circumstances to that divine source that is the presence of love, joy, harmony, and abundance. And we recognize that this is our spiritual birthright. It is into this dimension that we have been born. And our opportunity is to achieve mastery by blending the spiritual with the material, by bringing the awareness of the infinite being that delights in his self-expression through us and as us into this world and into our affairs. And so I'm knowing right here and right now that our greater good is being revealed as we joyously welcome it. I know the presence of infinite supply is already provided. That we put the divine first in all aspects of our lives. That we live from joy and love and allow our relationships to be healed and transformed to the transformative power of forgiveness and love. We allow our lives to be healed and transformed as we recognize that right here in this moment we are abundant beings, one with the eternal source. We recognize and know that we are created from wholeness, that which is always in perfect harmony with itself, and that wholeness is revealing itself as health and well-being and vitality. How good it is to stand in this truth, in this awareness of the infinite making itself known. And so I invite us now to, within our own being, make a resounding yes to this presence that seeks its highest expression through us, here and now. To know that we are blessed beyond measure, that we are joyously receiving all of our good. And because we are blessed, it becomes very easy to extend a blessing into the world. We bless our brothers and sisters around this planet. We are sensing and knowing a planet at peace and a world that works for everyone. We're bearing witness to truth, and we're celebrating that truth is revealed in all of its many forms. We bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of every faith. For where God is known, healing occurs. And as always, we bless this spiritual community, knowing that we are divinely guided, divinely sourced in our highest vision of possibility. For all of these blessings and so many more, I'm simply giving thanks in this moment. I'm simply allowing it to be so, as together we say, and so it is.